When I got home from work, I found a surprise waiting on the kitchen counter. It was a laminated sheet, placed right next to my dinner plate, titled in bold, 20 New Marriage Rules. At first, I assumed it was a joke. But the serious expression on my wife's face, arms folded as she stood by the refrigerator, told me otherwise. "What's this?" I asked, picking up the laminated list. "I think our marriage needs better structure," she replied in a firm tone. "These rules will help set clear expectations." I started reading through them, and with each line, my frustration grew. Rule 1 required me to share my location at all times. Rule 4 said any purchase over $50 needed her approval. Rule 12 asked me to text hourly updates when I was out with friends. Every rule felt more restrictive than the last. We've been married 7 years. But in the past 6 months, something had shifted. It began subtly. Comments about my friends, remarks about my clothes, questions about where I'd been. But this list? This was a different level. "You can't be serious," I said, setting the list down. "I am," she responded. "My friend's husband follows a similar setup. Their relationship has never been stronger." I stared at her, really seeing her. This wasn't the person I married. The woman I married believed in mutual respect and independence. Now, she wanted access to my accounts, control over my social life, and even to monitor my whereabouts. "I need some time to think," I said, doing my best to stay composed. "There's nothing to think about," she insisted. "These go into effect now." I noticed her phone light up with a message. She flipped it over quickly, but I glimpsed a group chat. She'd been updating her friends about this whole process. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about fixing our marriage. It was about control. It was about proving to her friends that she had influence over me. All those lunches at the country club, all those polished social media posts from her new circle, they weren't just rubbing off on her. They were shaping her. Or maybe they were just revealing who she'd always wanted to be. I didn't react. I ate dinner quietly while she watched, waiting for me to argue, plead, or compromise. But I didn't plan to give her the satisfaction. I wasn't thinking about how to adapt. I was planning how to bring this entire setup down. As I finished eating, I smiled, just enough to confuse her. She expected me to lash out. Instead, I was calm and collected. She clearly didn't know me as well as she thought. I wouldn't respond with 20 rebuttal rules. I only needed one. The next morning, I gave the list another look. The rules were just as extreme as I remembered. Rule 6. Share all personal passwords. Rule 9. Get her approval before making any plans. Rule 15. Send a photo if I'd be late. Rule 17. Gym time limited to 1 hour, 3 times a week. Only when she could verify where I was. This wasn't a relationship. It was a surveillance program. While she got ready for her weekly brunch, applying her makeup with care, I noticed her phone buzzing repeatedly. I picked it up to hand it to her and caught a glimpse of the group chat again. "Can't wait to hear how he took the rules," one message read. "You're lucky," said another. "My husband would never agree to that." So that's what this had become. I was being turned into a social display, a trained husband, paraded for approval. The thought made my stomach turn. "Your phone," I said, handing it back with a blank expression. "Thanks," she said, then paused and looked at me closely. "Have you given more thought to our new arrangement?" "Still thinking," I replied evenly. 20 rules take a while to process. She seemed satisfied, thinking I was giving in. "You'll see," she said. "This will make things better." After she left, I sat down and looked at everything with clear eyes. This wasn't about marriage. It was about appearances. She wanted to prove to her friends that she could tame her husband. I wondered when we'd stopped being equals. 6 months ago, she'd started hanging out with the wives of her boss and his associates. These women bragged about controlling their husbands. They measured their self-worth by how obedient their spouses were. My wife had once respected boundaries. Now she was imitating a lifestyle that undermined mutual respect. I decided to play along for now. That evening, I acted thoughtful but non-confrontational. I let her believe I was mulling things over. Meanwhile, I watched. She sent more updates during dinner. I saw her type. "He's starting to come around." Not much pushback. Easier than I thought. It hurt. But I kept my composure. This wasn't about pride, it was about taking back what we once had. Over the next 2 days, she began enforcing minor rules. She reminded me to share my location. She questioned a $60 purchase. She called me twice during a lunch with a colleague. I responded just enough to seem compliant, not enough to cause a scene. But all the while, I was crafting my move. I knew arguing over each rule would lead to endless negotiations, with her in charge. I needed a better strategy. Something simple, direct, and effective. On the third night, we sat down for dinner again. This time, she placed a new item next to my plate. A notepad labeled, "Rule Violations." Apparently, she intended to track my mistakes now. "Do you have something to say?" she asked, clearly expecting a reaction. "Actually," I said, setting my fork down, "I've thought a lot about your rules. And I've decided to add one of my own." Her eyes narrowed. "Your rule?" she asked, clearly thrown off. "Every relationship needs balance," I replied calmly. "You've outlined your expectations. Now it's my turn." She hesitated, clearly weighing whether this was worth challenging. Her whole system relied on the illusion that I was willingly going along. "Fine," she said eventually, arms folded again. I took a sip of water, then continued. "My rule is straightforward. Every rule you apply to me also applies to you. No exceptions." Her face went pale. "That's not how this works," she said. "It is now," I said firmly. "Location sharing, financial approvals, hourly updates, they go both ways. If I follow them, you follow them." "But my friends, this isn't about them," I interrupted. "This is about us. We're either equals, or we're not in this together." She shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable. "Some of these don't make sense for me. I'm not the one who what?" I asked. "Can't be trusted? Is that what you think after all these years?" She didn't respond, just stared at her plate. "Here's the deal," I said. "Starting tomorrow, we both follow all 20 of your rules. Plus my one rule. Equal application. If either of us breaks one, that rule is dropped, for both of us. If you can't follow your own system, it ends. Completely." I saw it sink in. The structure she built was now turned around. She'd have to live by her own design. "This is absurd," she muttered. "The whole point was to bring order to our relationship." "No," I corrected. "It was about control. And I'm not here to be controlled." I picked up my phone and opened the location sharing app she demanded I use. What happened next changed everything. The rule sheet stayed on the counter for one more day before she quietly folded it and slipped it into a drawer. Not torn, not destroyed, but put away, like something that had lost its relevance. The rulebook was dead because it couldn't survive mutual accountability. The illusion of control only works when it's one-sided. We didn't solve everything overnight. Trust had to be rebuilt. Respect had to be relearned. And love, real love, had to be remembered. Not the kind dressed up in laminated ultimatums or Instagram posts, but the kind rooted in compromise, support, and equal footing. In the following weeks, we began having real conversations. Not just about rules, but about why she felt the need for them. About the insecurity she had been masking with control. About the pressure she felt from that toxic social circle to present the perfect life, and the perfect, obedient husband. We talked about her fear of chaos, and mine of losing my autonomy. She left that group chat. Quietly, without announcement. Just disappeared. The brunches stopped. The comparisons ended. And for the first time in a long while, she looked at me. Not the image of me she wanted to show off. And I looked at her. Not the person she'd become under all that outside influence, but the woman I married. The one I chose to build a life with, before any of this nonsense started. We created new rules together. Just 3. Respect is non-negotiable. Decisions are made together. No outside influences dictate our inside life. No laminating. No threats. Just agreements made over coffee, not ultimatums served with dinner. And maybe that's the real rule we learned. If your marriage needs a power structure, it's already lost its foundation. But if you can strip it back to partnership, to honesty, to mutual choice, then maybe, just maybe, you've got a real shot. Because in the end, the strongest marriages don't need rulebooks. They need two people willing to listen, to grow, and most importantly, to meet as equals. And for the first time in months, that's exactly what we were, create. She reached for my hand then, fingers lacing with mine not out of habit, but intention. There was no tension, no lingering resentment. Just a shared understanding, hard-earned and real. We sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that only exists between people who've finally said everything that needed to be said. The rule sheet was gone, the power games dismantled, but what remained was something far more valuable: clarity. Clarity about who we were. Clarity about what we wanted. Clarity about what we would never allow again. The old version of our marriage, the one warped by ego, insecurity, and outside influence, had died the moment she fed that laminated sheet through the shredder. In its place was something healthier, simpler, and more honest. We had become what we should have been all along: partners. In the months that followed, we stopped focusing on who had control and started focusing on what needed care. Our conversations shifted from scorekeeping to understanding. Our disagreements became opportunities to grow, not battles to win. Sometimes we still stumble, old patterns don't vanish overnight. But the difference now is how we handle them. With mutual respect. With the agreement that no one gets to lead by force. It turns out, restoring a relationship doesn't take perfection. It just takes a line in the sand, drawn clearly and held firmly. A single, unwavering standard. If it's not fair for both, it's not fair at all. That's what changed everything. Not the confrontation. Not the standoff. Just one rule. One truth. One boundary that refused to bend. And that's how we saved our marriage, not by winning, but by ending the war.